like the spirit of liberty is alive and well. I really appreciate Jim introducing me. I couldn't have gotten a better introduction. But I think he's the kind of person we need in the U.S. Congress. Tends to be a very friendly crowd. I would like to introduce some of my family and a special guest that's traveling with me and helping me campaign this weekend. First, I would like to introduce my wife, Carol. We have 5 children. There are 2 here today, Dr. Joy LeBlanc and Dr. Rand Paul. He is holding us our youngest of the 18 grandchildren, John David. With her, as well as a sister, daughter-in-law, Peggy, is with us. And also representing the grandchildren is Valerie. If Valerie would stand. Also traveling with us this weekend is a former colleague at the U.S. Congress, and many of you will recognize him, and that is Mr. Barry Goldwater and his wife, Sylvia. And I'm delighted to have Barry traveling with us, and of course that makes us think back to 1964. And I know exactly where I was in 1964 in November. I was TDY in Peshawar, Pakistan. And of course that's a very interesting place right now today, because it's a very volatile area. But it was at that time I was stationed there, just TDY, temporary duty, when we traveled from Peshawar up to the Khyber Pass, up to Afghanistan, the very place where, you know, there's still a lot of problems over there. And I can remember being told by the officers that were senior officers that had been up there on other occasions, pointed out, and they pointed to these very, very mountainous areas, and they said, you know, you see those mountains up there? There have been tribes up there. They have been up there for hundreds of years. They like to be left alone, and nobody's ever conquered them. It seems like we never learn anything. But it's a real delight to be here, and it is a pleasure to be in an audience that does understand a lot of what I have to say. So you really don't need to hear from me. You already know what the story is. It is really great. You know, it's not quite like giving a speech on the House floor, and I'll tell you that. But you know, the campaign, from my assessment, is doing very well, and I thank you for all your efforts. But it hasn't always been that way. Matter of fact, about a year ago, I came visiting to your group here, and we talked about it, and there was an exploratory committee set up, and I was still reluctant. There were a lot of people urging me to run, and had been for quite a few months, if not a few years. But I was always reluctant because I had no idea where we were in our movement toward a free society, believing that there weren't quite enough people to really make a significant difference. And yet, I have found in the last year that not only is there a much larger remnant of true believers, but the young people are responding very favorably. We have now an young people campaigning very, very hard. They've worked hard in Iowa and so many here in New Hampshire as well as the other states. And it is great. We can talk to the young people and talk to them about freedom and the Constitution, self-reliance and personal responsibility, personal freedom. Of course, they love it. The idea that they don't have to pay income tax or have an income tax if we have our way. They like that. People who join us aren't coming because they think we're going to increase student grants and free education and anything for free. They understand what's going on. You know, there's a lot of reasons why we can criticize public education. There are a lot of shortcomings in public education. But you know, it must not be all that bad because these young people I've run into know their arithmetic. They have figured it out. They know that this deficit is huge, and the huge debt that we owe is put on their shoulders, and the young people realize that they can be paying a lot of income tax and a lot of Social Security tax for the next 30 or 40 or 50 years and not expect to get a whole lot out of it. And they are willing to assume the responsibility for themselves. But we do have a real mess. Our problem is getting to the free society. If we don't do anything and just sit back and wait, there will be a collapse of this system. There's no doubt in my mind that this system is not viable. Our system is no more viable than the Soviet system was. And Mises early on predicted that socialism can't work. There's no pricing system into it. Authoritarian rule doesn't work. It undermines liberty. And finally it collapses on its own weight. And that's what happened to the Soviet system. But Mises was no more optimistic about our system, which is a system of interventionism, of welfarism, inflationism, and corporatism. But his fear was that it too would go the way of socialism. But he did not predict the way of typical socialism or the socialism of the Soviet Union. But what he predicted would be sort of a fascist type of socialism where corporations were in bed with government. And I am very fearful that is the direction that we're moving in. And the main reason that we have to succeed because we have to stop that movement in that direction. If we aren't successful, if we can't reform the executive branch or the legislative branch in the near future, and a financial crisis comes, then is that an opportunity to pick up the pieces? Possibly, but that's not what we should look for. We have to try to work our way out of this and get a transitional period, at least to reverse this trend. We can't continue this way because under the circumstances of chaos, things could actually get worse. Even today, you know, take for instance medicine. We've had corporate medicine now for 35 years. And all we have done is push up the cost, lower the quality, and make it less available to the average person. So low middle income people do not have medical care available to themselves, and that wasn't the case before. So what is the option? What are you hearing? Republicans and Democrats too often. Democrats worse than Republicans. But if you listen to what the Republicans even said last night, they're talking about, well, we need more government. We need just better management of government. And so we don't need to go in that direction. This is the challenge that we have in all areas, whether it's fiscal responsibility, whether it has to be medical care or education, or our right to spend our own money. Are we able to shift the gears without making the problems much worse? And I say it's worth the try. I've been working at this for a year or two, you know, and thought that it might take another generation actually to get